The abandoned planet the wind howled over the empty plains of Velmer the sky. Was a strange mix of red and gray filled with smoke and ash from the war that had. Ended only days ago broken buildings stood like ghost fires still burned in. The distance this planet, once full of life, was now silent above the dead land. Large ships in the Alliance hovered they were here to collect what remained scraps technology and data. No one believed there were any survivors. The war had been brutal. Many had died. The rest were forgotten inside when the Alliance ships. A soldier stood near a window. His name was Cole Anders. He was quiet, strong, and known for doing what he believed was right even when others didn't. He looked down at the planet, his face full of thought. The commander said, no one was left alive. They ordered everyone to leave, but something about it didn't sit right with him. Sergeant Anders, a voice called from behind him. It was Captain Brent, a strict man who followed every rule. Get ready to leave. This mission is over. Cole nodded, but he didn't move. He was listening to something in his earpiece, a faint noise, broken words, static. He frowned. Wait, did you hear that? He asked. Hear what? The captain looked annoyed. Cole turned up the volume. A weak voice came through, crackling, soft, desperate. Help, please. We're still here. The captain shook his head. Probably just interference, ghosts. In a machine, this place is full of echoes. But Cole wasn't sure the voice had sounded real. Scared alive later that night while the rest of the team packed up. Cole sat alone in the ship's control room. He replayed the signal over and over. Each time it became clearer. We are trapped. Need help. Anyone? He stared at the screen, heart pounding. He couldn't ignore it. Someone was alive down there. Someone had been left behind. He walked to the flight deck and looked at a small escape pod sitting in the corner. It was old, barely used, not meant for long trips, but it could get him to the surface. He tapped his comm to call his old friend Mara Quinn, an officer on a nearby ship. Cole, she answered. What's wrong? I think there are survivors down there, he said. I heard a signal. It's weak, but it's real. She sighed. The fleet is leaving. Cole. Command says the planet is cleared. Don't go getting yourself in trouble. I can't leave if someone's still alive. If you break protocol, they'll court-martial. You let them. He ended the call and climbed into the pod as the engines hummed to life. He whispered to himself, I won't walk away, not this time. The pod dropped fast, cutting through the thick clouds. Fire danced around the windows as it entered Velmer's atmosphere. The world below looked even worse. Up close, broken, empty, cold. The pod crashed into a field near what was once a city. Cole grabbed his pack, loaded with supplies, and stepped outside. The air was heavy with smoke. He coughed and pulled a scarf over his mouth. He turned on a scanner. It beeped once, then again. Something was out there. He followed the signal, stepping over fallen walls and broken machines. Every corner seemed to hold a shadow. Every sound made him pause. The scanner beeped louder. He stopped in front of a collapsed building. Part of the wall had caved in, but there was a small tunnel underneath. He got down on his knees and crawled inside. It was dark, quiet. He turned on his flashlight. The beam of light revealed a narrow hallway, cracked and dusty. He walked slowly, carefully. Then he heard a soft sound, breathing. He raised his light. In the corner of the room sat a small figure, thin, pale, with glowing eyes, full of fear. An alien child, not older than 10. She looked at him, trembling. Cole dropped to one knee. Hey, he said gently, I'm not here to hurt you. I heard your signal. More shadows moved behind her. Others stepped out. More children, a few adults, all weak, all afraid they had been left behind. Cole's heart ached. You came. The girl whispered. Everyone else left. He nodded. I'm here now, and I'm not leaving without you. Outside, far above, Alliance ships began to pull away from the planet. They believed the mission was over, but deep below, in the ruins of a broken world, one human had made a choice. He would not turn his back. He would stay. The forgotten survivors. Cole Anders sat in silence inside the dark chamber. The air was cold and damp. Soft breathing echoed off the cracked stone walls. Alien eyes stared at him wide with fear and wonder. None of them spoke. At first they just watched, waiting to see what he would do. The small girl, the one who had spoken to him, stood closest. Her name, he would soon learn, was Tara. Her voice had been the one he heard in the distress signal. Even now, she kept one hand tightly wrapped around a small glowing pendant that hung from her neck. It pulsed slowly like a weak heartbeat. Cole reached into his pack and pulled out a sealed food pack. He held out slowly, carefully. You must be hungry, he said, keeping his tone gentle. Tyra didn't move, but an older alien male stepped forward. His skin was faded silver, his body thin and fragile, but his eyes were sharp. He took the food without a word and handed it to Tara. She opened it with shaking fingers and began to eat. The others followed. There were 9 of them in total, 5. Children, 2 elders, and 2 younger adults. They had no weapons, no tools. Nothing but the broken pieces of their home. Cole could see they had been surviving underground for days, maybe. Longer, barely enough water, almost no food. Their shelter was made of rubble and torn blankets, and yet somehow they were still alive. "My name is Cole," he said. "Sitting cross-legged on the ground, I'm a human. I came from the Alliance ship. Above, I heard your signal." The older male finally spoke. His voice was deep calm. "But Cole, then why did the others not come? Why did they leave us to die?" Cole didn't have an answer. He looked down ashamed. "I don't know," he admitted. "They said no one was left. They were wrong." The man's eyes narrowed. "They weren't wrong. They just didn't care." Tyra looked up. Her voice was quiet. "You came, you didn't leave." Cole gave her a small smile. "No, I didn't." The next hours passed slowly. Cole helped them share the food and gave them his spare water. He passed out thermal blankets and offered to help repair the broken heating unit in the wall. He wasn't an engineer, but he had learned a few things in the military. They watched him work in silence. Every sound in the ruined chamber seemed louder. In the quiet outside, the wind screamed like a living thing. The weight of destruction pressed down from above as the heater sparked to life and warm air returned to the room. The tension slowly faded. The children fell asleep first, huddled together like kittens around a fire. The adults sat in a corner whispering quietly among themselves. Cole leaned against the wall, his mind racing. Who are these people? Why had they been left behind? And why had the Alliance insisted? The planet was empty. The older male who finally introduced himself as Ellerin answered some of his questions. "We were hidden," Ellerin said, "not by accident before the final attack. Some of us were told to go underground. Our leaders feared the Alliance would do more than fight. They feared silence." Cole frowned. "What do you mean?" Ellerin's eyes burned. "Your leaders made promises, peace, safety, but when said no to their mining demands, they sent warships instead." Cole's chest tightened. He had always believed the Alliance was built on justice, freedom, unity, but standing here among these survivors, he felt something dark stirring in his gut. "They said the war was necessary." Cole muttered. "Necessary for what?" Ellerin asked. "To take what we would not give to erase those who said no." Cole had no answer. He stood and walked to the entrance tunnel outside. The sky had turned darker night. On Velra was danger. Strange winds moved the ash like rivers in the air. The city beyond the cave looked like a graveyard. He turned on his comm to check for signals. Nothing. Silence, then a beep. "A message, Sergeant Anders." Came a cold voice. "You are not authorized to remain on or return to the ship at once. Failure to obey will result in disciplinary action." Cole stared at the message, his heart heavy. They knew he was here. They didn't want him here. As he turned off the comm, a question burned in his mind. Was this about helping survivors, or was this about keeping secrets buried? The deep wounds morning on Velra came with no sunlight, only a dull red haze hanging low in the sky. The clouds were thick with smoke and ash, and the air smelled like burned metal. Nothing sang here. No birds, no wind through trees, just silence. Cole woke on the cold floor of the shelter, his back sore and his mind restless. He looked around at the sleeping faces of the survivors' children, curled up close to each other. Ellerin sitting upright against the wall, still awake, still watching. There was no peace here, not even in sleep. "You didn't sleep," Cole said quietly. Ellerin's eyes didn't move from the tunnel entrance. "I've seen too much darkness to rest easily." Cole sat beside him. "How long were you down here before I came?" 11 days, Ellerin replied. "Maybe more. Hard to count time when it all feels the same." Cole nodded, trying to imagine what those days must have been like, trapped in the dark, running low on food, waiting for help that never came. It made his chest tighten. He had lost friends in battle, yes, but this was something else. This was abandonment. Later that day, Cole moved through the underground corridors, trying to map them out. The shelter was part of an old maintenance system beneath the city. Long before the war, it had been used to store equipment and connect buildings. Now it was cracked and forgotten. In one corner, he found a collapsed wall and dug through it to create a new exit tunnel just in case they had to leave quickly. He also spent time fixing the broken comm equipment. It was slow work, but necessary. The more he studied the signal logs, the more he realized something strange. The distress call from the survivors hadn't gone out to the full Alliance network. It had only been transmitted locally. Someone had blocked it from reaching the fleet. That made his skin crawl. Why would anyone stop a cry for help that evening as the group ate the last of the food packs. Ellerin finally shared the story that Cole had been wondering about since he arrived before the bombs fell. Ellerin began. We heard rumors strange visitors from the Alliance met with Delmarin. Leaders they offered peace, yes, but also control. They wanted our Landar. Resources, especially the ground beneath the city. Cole raised his eyebrows. What was under the city a mineral? Ellerin said, we call it Farnite, your people call. It's something else, I'm sure. It powers weapons, ships, machines, very rare, very powerful. Cole had heard of it. Farnite was the backbone of modern weapon tech. Small pieces could power a warship's engine for months, and Velra had it in large amounts. Suddenly the war made more sense. So they offered peace, Cole said, but only if your people gave them the Farite. Aaron nodded slowly, and when we refused, they sent warnings and ships, then fire. Cole looked away ashamed. He had fought in that war, believed it was just now. He felt like a pawn. Our leaders tried to save what they could. Aaron continued. They moved families underground, told us to hide, but we didn't expect the Alliance to bury the truth. They told the galaxy that Velra surrendered, that we were evacuated. It was a lie. Cole stood up and walked toward the back room, trying to clear his head. This wasn't just about helping survivors anymore. This was about something bigger, something wrong. And then he heard the sound of faint buzz, mechanical. He pulled out his scanner. The signal was weak, but moving. Something or someone was near the surface, not far from their location. He rushed back into the main room. We have to move now. Why? Aaron asked. Already alert. Scout drone, Alliance tech. It's looking for us. Panic spread to the group, but Cole calmed them. He guided them deeper into the tunnels through the escape path he had cleared earlier. They moved quickly, quietly through the dark corridors from a small vent. Cole watched as the drone floated by above the ground, scanning the ruins. Its red light pulsed like a heartbeat. They're not here to rescue anyone, Cole whispered. They're making sure no one survived. Tyra looked up at him, eyes wide. Why? Cole didn't answer. He didn't have the heart to say it out loud. Because if the galaxy knew the truth, that the Alliance had bombed innocent people for power, it would tear everything apart. When the drone was gone, they'd return to the shelter. Cole stayed awake that night, holding his weapon close. He didn't trust the silence anymore, not when it came from above. The next morning, he sent a hidden message to someone he trusted more than anyone, Lieutenant Mora Quinn. She was smart, brave, and not afraid to ask questions. He told her what he found the survivors. The signal blocked the drone. He ended the message with just 4 words. They left them hear the hidden truth. The next day, Cole felt a strange pressure in the air, like the world was holding its breath. The survivors had grown quieter, their eyes darker. Even the children, who had begun to smile again, seemed nervous. They could feel it too. Something was coming. Cole sat by the broken transmitter, trying to clean the old wires and adjust the signal range. The equipment was damaged during the bombing, but parts of it still worked. Static filled the small room. His fingers were black with dust and oil. He kept checking his communicator, waiting for a reply from Mara Quinn. She hadn't responded yet. Maybe she didn't get the message. Maybe she couldn't answer. Or maybe someone was listening. He looked over at Tara, who sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing shapes in the dust with a piece of broken metal. She didn't say anything, but Cole noticed she kept glancing toward the tunnel, toward the outside world. Tyra, he said softly, are you scared? She nodded. They're looking for us. Cole didn't ask how she knew. Sometimes fear speaks louder than facts. He had felt it too, deep in his chest, like a quiet drum beat that wouldn't stop. When he finally got the transmitter running again, he scanned old military frequencies. Most were silent, others were filled with coded Alliance chatter, orders, patrol updates. Meaningless numbers, but one channel, nearly dead, carried fragments of old data. Cole leaned in, adjusting the gain. It was a log file from one of the Alliance officers stationed on Velmera. Before the final attack, he pressed play. A woman's voice crackled through the speaker. Tired, tense day 14 mining continues in Sector 9. Resistance from locals increasing. They don't want us here. They know what we're doing. High command says to push forward. I don't agree, but orders are orders. Cole's heart skipped. He played the next file. Day 16. They've started hiding families underground. Not fighters, just children. Elder civilians. They're afraid. We were told this was a peaceful operation. It's not the commanders. They want to wipe the city and take the minerals without a fight. The voice stopped. There was a pause, and she whispered, this isn't justice, this is theft. The recording ended. Cole sat in silence. The truth was right there, buried in an old audio log. The Alliance had lied they had come to Velmer not for peace, but for power. They bombed the city knowing civilians were still inside, and then they left. Telling the galaxy it had been a clean operation, Cole felt sick. He copied the logs to his own device, then erased all traces from the transmitter. If anyone found out what he had downloaded, they would come for him harder, not to question him, but to silence him. That night, while the others slept, he stood watch at the tunnel entrance staring at the red sky. The stars were hidden behind clouds and ash, but Cole wasn't looking. Up, he was thinking about everything he had believed the Alliance had given him. A purpose-rule structure. They told him he was fighting for something bigger, but now he didn't know what he was fighting for anymore. And then his comm crackled. Cole, this is Mara. I got your message. I read everything. You're not crazy, but you're in danger. He stepped away from the tunnel, heart pounding. Mara, tell me. You're somewhere safe. I am for now, but listen, the command intercepted your message. They know you're still on Velra. They're calling it a betrayal there. Sending a retrieval team. They say it's to bring you back, but that's not the truth. Cole already knew they're coming to erase the evidence, he said quietly. Yes, Mara replied, and if they find those survivors alive, they'll make sure no one ever hears from them. Cole's jaw tightened. How much time do I have? 2 days. Maybe less. I've slowed the team down with false coordinates, but that won't last. Thank you, Mara. Be careful, Cole. And if you find more, send it to me. I'll leak. If the message ended, Cole sat back staring into the flickering shadows of the tunnel. 2 days, maybe less, than everything would come crashing down. He turned toward the dark hallway that led to the old data vaults beneath the city ruins. No one had dared go down there yet. Collapsed beams, unstable walls, strange light seen at night. But he had no choice now. If there was more proof hidden in those vaults, he had to find it. And if the Alliance wanted to bury the truth, then Cole Anders would dig it up. The last stand. The sun never truly rose on Velmer. The sky remained a constant burn of smoky red and gray, like a wound that refused to heal. Cole woke to that same dull glow leaking to the cracks in the ruin walls, and he knew their time was almost up. He had barely slept. Every noise outside, every flicker of light from the surface made him think. The Alliance team had arrived. The survivors were tense. The children clung to the adults, who no longer whispered doubts, but watched Cole with something new in their eyes. Trust, fear, both. Cole stood before them now, a soldier, without a flag, not here for a mission, not here for glory, just a man who refused to let innocent lives be forgotten. We don't have much time, he said, pointing to a map he had drawn in the dirt with a piece of broken pipe. The Alliance will send a team soon. They're not coming to help us. They're coming to erase us. The word hung in the air like smoke. Tyra stood close to him, her small hand resting on his arm. What can we do? She asked. Cole looked around at the faces of survivors, thin, tired, unarmed. They had no weapons, no real defense, but they had the tunnels, they had each other, and they had him. We survive, he said, and we make sure the truth gets out. The next hours were spent preparing. Cole led them through the underground network, identifying weak spots, escape routes, and safe rooms. He turned collapsed sections into traps, hidden pits, sharp debris, loose rubble. They had no guns, but they had the advantage of knowing the terrain. He also taught the older survivors how to move silently, how to signal danger without words, how to stay hidden in shadows. It wasn't much, but it was something. Tyra helped him carry scrap metal to block off one tunnel. They'll come through here, right? She asked. Cole nodded. If they do, this wall will slow them down. What if it doesn't? He paused, looking down at her. Then I slow them down. She frowned. You mean you'll fight them alone if I have to? She didn't say anything else. She just kept working. As night approached, Cole checked the old data vaults beneath the city again. The deeper levels were unstable, but he found something valuable, a damaged storage unit filled with Alliance files, blueprints, voice logs, security codes. He copied everything onto a stolen drive and tucked it into a hidden pocket inside his jacket. If he didn't make out, Mara Quinn would. As he returned to the shelter, he found Ellerin waiting for him. You are different, Ellerin said. Because I care. Cole asked. No, because you didn't ask for anything in return. Cole sat beside him. I didn't come here to be a hero. Then why? Cole didn't answer right away. He thought about the war, the lies, the people he trusted who turned away from the truth. He thought about the first time he killed someone and the first time he saved someone, and how the second one meant more. Because I've seen what happens when good people stay silent. He finally said, and I won't be silent anymore. The silence stretched between them comfortable this time. Just after midnight, the warning. Came a soft peep from Cole's motion scanner movement 6 signatures heavily. Armored approaching fast, they were here. Cole gathered the survivors he gave each. Of them, a roll of the children were led to the deep chamber, where the walls were thick and stable. Aaron and 2 others stayed to guard them. The rest followed Cole. To the outer tunnels they waited in. Darkness and the sound began footsteps heavy, and measured the quiet hum of energy rifles, a flicker of flashlights, scanning the debris. The Alliance team entered the ruins expecting a clean sweep. What they got was something else entirely. The first trap triggered as the lead soldier stepped on a loose plate. The ground collapsed beneath him, dropping him into a pit lined with sharp steel beams. He screamed, not fatally hurt, but out of fight. The second was hit. With a cloud of dust and metal fragments that cut off his vision, he stumbled backward into a collapsing beam and went down hard. The others responded quickly, but they were confused. This was supposed to be an abandoned ruin, not a battlefield. Cole emerged from behind a broken pillar, armed only with a stun gun he had built from scrap. He struck one of the soldiers from behind, disabling his gear and knocking him unconscious. They returned fire, but Cole vanished into the shadows again. The battle wasn't about strength, it was about speed, surprise, survival. As the team pushed deeper, they realized they were walking into a maze, tunnels that looped traps around every turn, walls closing behind them one by one. They were separated. Cole fought like a ghost, moving in and out of darkness, guiding the survivors to safety while buying them time. Finally, only 2 soldiers remained. They made it to the central shelter. Cole stood waiting. "You're protecting them," one of them asked, raising his rifle. "They're not your people. They are now." Cole said. A shot rang out. Dust filled the air, and then silence. The fallout, the smoke hung in the air like a veil, heavy and bitter. The silence after the battle was worse than the noise. It wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. It felt like something important had been torn loose and carried away. In the dust, Cole lay on the cold stone floor, blood trickling down the side of his face. He could barely move. His left arm, pain throbbed through his ribs, sharp and deep, but he was alive. And when he opened his eyes, he saw movement. Tyra, her small hands were trying to drag him out of the tunnel, her face strewn with dirt and tears. "You're okay," she kept saying, her voice shaky. "You're okay. You said you'd come back." Cole tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. "Did they get in?" Tyra shook her head. "We stopped them behind her." Ellerin and the others emerged from the shadows. They looked tired, worn, but they were standing. Some limp, some held wounds wrapped in cloth, but all of them had survived, all except one near the tunnel wall. The body of one of the younger survivors, Giro, lay still. He had stayed behind to delay. One of the soldiers, Cole, closed his eyes, the grief settling in his chest like iron. They had won, but it hadn't come without cost. Later that night, Cole sat near the fire they had built from broken support beams. He stared at the flames as they danced, the heat brushing against his face. The group sat in a wide circle, silent. For a long time, no one said a word. Then Ellerin spoke. "You showed us something today, not just bravery, something more." Cole looked at him, tired. "But listening, you fought not because you had to, but because you chose to. Not many from your kind would do that." Cole's voice was low. "I'm not proud of what my kind did to you, or what they still plan to do." He reached into a jacket and pulled out the drive. Was scratched, a little melted around the edges, but the data was still intact. "This has the truth. Everything, logs, orders, messages, proof that the Alliance didn't come here for peace. They came for power, and when you said no, they decided to bury you." He handed the drive to Aaron. "You should have this." Cole said, "This is your truth." Aaron's hand closed around it slowly. "And what will you do now?" Cole looked around at the faces lit by firelight. Survivors who had trusted him, followed him, fought beside him. "I'm going to send this to the one person I still trust," he said, "and after that I'll wait for what Try asked softly." Cole stared into the fire. Consequences. He walked outside before dawn, standing beneath the open sky. The clouds had broken slightly, revealing a single pale star above the horizon. It was quiet, not peaceful, but quiet. He took a breath, slow and painful, and activated his communicator, Mara. He whispered, "Are you there?" The voice came back immediately. "Cole, I've been trying to reach you. Are you alive?" Veerly, he explained what had happened. To fight the drive, Gerald sacrificed the Alliance team, neutralized. Maya's voice was heavy with worry. "They'll come harder. Next time they'll send more, I know," Cole said, "but they won't find anything here. We're going underground, deeper, off-grid. Send me the data." He uploaded the files. While watching the skies slowly lighten with the first hints of day, once you have this, he said, do what you promised. Leak it, let the galaxy see what really happened here. You'll be hunted, Cole, he gave a dry laugh. I already am. When the files finished transmitting, Cole ended the call. He didn't look back at the shelter. He just stood in the wind, letting the dust whip around him inside. The survivors packed what little they had. They would move deeper into the tunnels through an old transport line that led miles away. It was dangerous, dark, unknown, but it was better than waiting for another attack. As they prepared to leave, Tara came to Cole and handed him something. It was her pen, the glowing one he had seen when he first arrived. This kept me alive, she said. Now it's yours. Cole hesitated. I can't take this. You didn't leave us, she said, so you deserve it. He took the pendant and closed his hand around it. They left Velmer's surface before sunrise. No words, no goodbye, just shadows slipping into darkness, and somewhere out in the stars a storm was building anew. Legacy weeks passed. The name Cole Anders disappeared from the official records of the Alliance's rank was revoked, his image removed from military history too. Those in power, he no longer existed, but to the people watching from shadows, listening closely and waiting for something real, his name had just begun to matter. The truth spread quietly at first like a small ember drifting through dry air. One leak, one file of data. Drop uploaded anonymously from a hidden terminal in neutral space. Voice logs. Mining orders battlefield reports. The voices of Alliance officers talking about Velmer as a resource zone, not a home. Maps of refugee shelters labeled non-priority zones. The sound of an officer saying no survivors expected. Collateral acceptable. The galaxy trembled. Cole's message was short only. For words attached to the transmission, they left them there within days. Planets far from Velmer began to speak out. Peaceful protests turned into demands. Alliance representatives were pulled from their seats. A senator from Torvin resigned in tears. A pilot from the Outer Rim admitted she had helped block distress signals. One by one the lies fell, but Cole never saw any of it happen. Firsthand, he and the survivors had vanished into the deeper tunnels beneath. Fell removing with caution, staying out of sight. They traveled through collapsed rail lines, under broken cities, through silent catacombs that hadn't seen life in centuries. They were tired, always hungry but alive, and for the first time they had hoped. Cole had changed since the day he disobeyed orders and dropped into the ruins, not in body, though he was thinner, scared, and slower, but in spirit he had found something he didn't know. He'd been missing a purpose that wasn't given by command, or reason that didn't come with medals or ranks. A truth he could carry without shame. In a deep valley far from the destruction, survivors began to build again. Not a city, not yet, just shelters, gardens, a waterline. They called it refuge, not as a place to hide, but as a place to begin again. Cole helped where he could, lifting beams, repairing filters, digging foundations with his bare hands. He never asked to leave, but they followed him anyway, not because he was stronger or smarter, but because he had stayed when no one else did. One evening, as the orange light of Valera's broken sky pulled across the horizon, Tyra ran to him, holding a small device in her hands. It's her, she said. Mara. Cole took the communicator and stepped away from the others. Mara's face appeared worn but smiling. You made it, she said softly. We're alive. Cole answered. Barely. You lit a fire, she told him. People are talking, questioning, asking what else the Alliance buried. Cole didn't smile. He just looked off at the field where children were planting seeds in rows. Good, they should know you can't come back. You know that, right? I know, and you're okay with that. He nodded slowly. This is where I belong now. Mara hesitated. They'll come after you again. When the heat dies down, they won't forget what you did. Cole looked down at the small glowing pendant Tira had given him. He still wore it around his neck. Let them come, he said after the call ended. He walked back to the settlement where Erin was helping set up a solar panel. You spoke to her? Ellerin asked. She's safe, Cole replied. The truth is out. Ellerin gave a slow nod. You know, we could use a name for this place. Something strong, something that remembers. Cole looked out at the growing camp, the people working together, the quiet laughter, children who had once lived in fear. Colliger's rise, he said, and so they did. Years passed. Gerald's rise grew from shelters to homes, from a gathering to a community. Not just others came too, refugees, outcast, truth seekers, people who had lost faith in governments, but still believed in each other. Stories were told around the fires at night, stories of the war, the fall, the silence, and the one human who refused to walk away children, who had never seen the old cities, learned his name like it was part of the stars. They wore glowing pendants like tires and left one hanging on the stone wall at the edge of town, a marker not of death, but of memory Cole never asked for. Thanks he never wanted praise, he just kept working, planning, building, teaching the young how to stand tall and speak the truth, even when it hurt. And when he was older, slower, and his hair had turned to silver, he still walked the outer roads at night just to listen to the quiet. Sometimes he would stop and look up at the sky, not for rescue, not for escape, but because he knew that somewhere someone was listening, and he hoped they would choose the harder path, the path that asked them not to turn away, and when they did, they would not walk it alone.